Welcome back. In this video, we are going to be learning how to do an angled bob. In this particular one, we will not be doing graduation. We'll do that in a different video. But for now, we're going to learn how to create an angled bob or asymmetric bob where it's shorter in the back and longer in the front. I'm going to teach you different ways to troubleshoot and how to do this in a way that works really well, can be achieved time and time again, and is just a very easy way to remember how to do this cut. So we're going to start with this one as well, being cut down the middle, because it's just easier to teach symmetrical haircuts on either side first as you're learning, and then we can dive into how you would do that with a side part. But what we're going to do first is just get her nice and combed. If you have a client or doll head as you're practicing that's very tangly, very frizzy, just make sure you use some really strong smoothing products. In this case, I did Super Skinny Serum. This particular doll head, the texture is very, very wiry and almost seems like it may not be all human hair, although it was supposed to be. So whatever you need to do to be able to control it and keep the combing very easy for you so you don't have to work too hard. So we're going to part it down the middle, get it nice and smooth, make sure everything is nice and smooth all the way down, make sure no hair is caught up underneath the neck, and then let's talk about what we want to do as far as the angle. So a lot of times there's certain mistakes people will make when they're doing this haircut. One of them is to do your guide and then immediately start going down, because clients will say, I want a V in the back. Well, if you cut it to a V, so meaning you cut the middle and then V down right there, you won't really have a nice transition from short to long. It will be so quick and so sudden that all it's going to do is cause this hair here that's longer to flip out into that shape, and you're not going to end up with the V like they're wanting. So when they say V, it really is still the shape U. So you can do U's that are a little bit quicker and come down, but typically you're going to do them based on the client's head and neck shape. So what I mean by that is how I assess how quickly I will start over directing that design line down will be based on the width of their neck. If they have a very wide neck and you don't make that initial design line or guide wide enough, it's going to look like it comes down too fast, and those hairs are going to flip up when you go to style them. So what you want to do, and on the flip side, if their neck is very narrow and you make your guide too wide, you're going to feel like you're having to transition from short to long really quickly. So we want it to look very intentional, very soft, and very seamless so that it grows out very nice. So to do that, we're going to take our comb and we're going to lay it flat against the back of her neck. And you're going to determine how much of that comb is flat before the neck starts curving. In her case, this much of the comb is touching her neck. This is how wide my design line will be, where it's straight across before I start gradually creating that U shape going down towards the front. If her neck was very, very wide and we set this on here and it was that much, you would do that much straight across before you slowly start curving down towards the face. So you want to first determine length, width of that guide first, and then how long you want it to be in the front, and that's going to help you determine when you start over directing that down how quickly you need to angle that down to meet the length in the front. Most of the time it's going to be a soft, gradual angle down, but sometimes you'll have clients who really want something very strong, and maybe they're leaving it down through here and you need to figure out how you get from point A to point B. So you'll establish that by figuring out how wide is this going to be, then where you're going to start curving it, and once you figure out where you're going to start curving it, you need to know what that line is and establish what that angle will be. And that's going to help you be even on either side. Okay? So again, very similar to my other cuts. I don't do a whole lot of sectioning, although I do sectioning in this particular haircut, just like the last one. But when I'm doing the design line, I typically do the whole thing at once. Unless their hair is extremely thick and very hard to cut through, then I may section it out and do it in subsections. If I do it in subsections, this design line would be about 1 inch over the ear with everything else combed up, and then I would let out another section and then the last section combed to the middle. So that is an option, whatever works best for you, but I'm gonna do this all in one cut because I'm gonna be doing finishing and layering and everything like that. So I don't need to spend any extra time sectioning it right now. One last thing to consider, although in this haircut we're not doing graduation, if you were going to do graduation, I always talk to my clients about how the line or the design line needs to be about at their hairline in order for that graduation to lay really nice. If you try to do the graduation longer and that heaviness of the graduation comes down, what it's gonna do is make that bottom flip out, and you're not gonna end up with a really nice clean line. So if you wanna see a really nice clean line, if you're gonna graduate that hair, it needs to be right up to their hairline for it to come and tuck in right there. So when you're doing a bob without graduation and it's just got regular bob layers, that could be at any length that's above the shoulder to create that nice shape. But if you are going to do graduation, make sure you're taking it short enough so that you don't end up with a little question mark and then a flip at the bottom. So with that said, let me grab my scissors and we'll get started. So I'm going to tip her forward again. That just helps me release the hair that's underneath the occipital bone and makes it a little easier to work and see what I'm doing. Make sure her hair is nice and combed. I'm going to take this right up to her neckline so that you can really see what I'm doing here. I'm going to determine how wide this is going to be, which is about that wide there, maybe a little more than 1 inch. And I'm not going to really bring this hair into my hands right now because that's going to elevate it slightly, and it's going to give it a little bit of graduation. So as much as possible, I'm going to cut it against her neck. This is very challenging on a doll head because the skin doesn't have any give. On a person, this is a lot easier. I'm going to double check where her hairline is again, and I'm going to make my first cut right in the center. You want to make sure that that very first cut is even, so go ahead and go back and check it. And then we're going to widen that to be that little more than 1 inch section. And again, that hair is going to push because doll heads are very challenging to get a nice clean line back here, but you can do it, just keep at it. And since I don't have a mirror, I want to make sure that I am nice and right in the middle. Some doll head companies like Pivot Point will give you little markers to know if you're in the middle. This one's coming down at a point so I can kind of tell. And I think I'm pretty close to the middle, but with a client, you would have them directly facing the mirror. You could see where their face, and then you kind of know if you're in the middle there. So that's how wide we're going to make it. And so step one is creating that design line. Come in this way. Okay, so once we have that determined, we would have already talked to our client in the consultation to figure out how long they want it in the front. This one, let's see, is she even in the front? She's a little longer on this side. What I'm gonna do is make this the length we're going to, so you can see something very extreme in how I would do that. So we're gonna now start creating that U shape, and I know that I need it to be about at that angle to get to that length in the front. So I'm gonna determine that that's roughly, looks like a 30-degree angle or so. So just so that I can remember and keep myself on track, and we'll keep going. So now I'm gonna start that U, and I'm gonna start working my way to the front there, but I'm not going to go much more past the side before I start working on the other side. So you can see that this hair is going to flip out here, and so I need to make this first part a little more gradual before I start angling down. So I'm going to soften that U shape a little bit, press it into her neck, and start like that. Okay, and now I'm going to come on the other side before I move on and mimic that same shape on the other side. Now really make sure that you have your angle good here and you're confident that you're going to the right length here, because in this part we're going to be cutting short to long. And if you remember in my layer video, cutting short to long, it's always, or long to short, I'm sorry, cutting long to short, it's always very easy to take it shorter than you want to. It's always a lot easier to cut short to long. And you definitely can do that in this instance, like this, but it's a little hard. You got to get your comb out of the way, try to get your fingers in there. And so I will do some of that, but to get that initial cut, sometimes it's just easier to come in here, but I want to make sure that my angle is good before I make that cut and not take it too short. Okay. I'm still not quite happy with how this angle is going here, and I'm going to straighten that out a little bit more. And so what we're doing is carving out this shape. Think of my way of teaching and cutting as sketching rather than drawing a straight line. We're going to sketch out this shape little by little and try to avoid any major mistakes that are very difficult to fix down the road. Now this is not the only way to do a bob haircut, but it's one way that works, and it has worked for me for many, many years. Okay, so I want to cross-check this before I go any further and make sure that I'm not coming down too long on this side. And if I am, I need to go in and fix that just a little. Okay, then I want to kind of release that and make sure I'm fairly happy with how that's looking before I move on. Okay, so now there are a couple different ways you can do this. You can bring this hair back here and cut like that. But keep in mind that when you do that, you are elevating this hair here and creating graduation. So if you don't want that, then you're going to want to work on the neck as you work around, okay? The other thing you want to make sure is if you don't have a guide like we have here, we have a guide already, we know how long we're going. If the hair was very long and you were just establishing it as you went along, with her head tipped down, as you go to the front, you may think you're angled, but when you bring her back up, let's see here. So you may think you're angled, but when you bring her back up, you may not be as angled as you want to be. So keep in mind her head position the whole time, especially if you don't have this guide you're working towards. If you're just establishing the length as you go and you have her tipped down as you come around this curve here, you may take it shorter than you want it to go, okay? And it may end up looking much more straight than you want it to. So always be aware of what her head positioning is doing. As we're working in the back, it's very helpful to have her head turned down. But as we go to the front, you're going to want her to come up straight. And if you need to be able to get in this area, you can tip her to the side so that you could get in that working zone. But it's very hard to keep her head down and to establish a nice line that still looks like the line you're wanting once she comes back up. Okay. So now I'm going to elevate this hair ever so slightly, but I'm not going to tip it back towards myself. I'm just going to hold it here. Now with this hair coming into my finger, I am creating a bit of graduation there that I'll have to fix later, but I'm okay with that. I'm going to go back and forth, and you can see that I am actually straightening out that angle a little bit. And now I'm going to start working on the sides. Okay, so I'm going to tip her over. I want her head to be up and down like this before I tip her over. This is going to allow me to determine how long that shape is, especially if I don't have this guide here to go to. Now, as I come around the head, we want to remember that the ear is going to cause a hole in any shape that's shorter than the shoulder. Once it hits the shoulder, you don't have to worry about the ear causing a hole as much in your design line. But once the hair comes above the shoulder, you're going to want to make sure that you always account for the ear in your design line. I'll show you what I mean. As we come around, I'm going to take my scissor, the back of the blade, not the cutting area, obviously. I'm going to take it and do a little push here. My fingers are holding the hair very loosely so that it can slide through my hair, and I'm going to push a little bit underneath. So now I have given myself a little extra pull there, and that hair is not going to cause a hole when I dry it. The ear is not going to cause a hole as I dry it by the ear kind of pulling that hair out. And so if you're ending up with holes in your design line, it's probably because you're forgetting that the ear is going to cause that hair to elevate a little bit. Now, if you're right-handed, their right side is going to be more challenging because you have to cut long to short. So just be very careful as you're working. Now, as you get past the curve of the head here, as the head starts curving in towards the face, this hair here needs to travel back in order to maintain that nice, solid design line. If I follow her hairline and continue to cut to here, and then I try to travel this hair back where it's going to be once it's styled, you're going to have your line and then shorter hair here. So if you're finding that your design line doesn't go all the way to a point, it's probably because you're following that design line all the way where it grows, and you don't want to do that. You actually want to over direct that hair back with the rest of it so that it stays longer there. I'll show you what I mean. Okay, we're going to hold that loosely in our hand and make sure that nothing from the ear is going to be causing a hole, and we're going to create that line there. Now, your design line is not going to be even because you've left a longer piece here over the ear, and that's okay. Now we're going to go back through and we're going to make sure that we have nice, even lines, because we did elevate here just a little bit, so we want to make sure that we double check that elevation and make sure we've got a line that we want there. Don't mess with the ear, anything over the ear right now, and anything through the front while it's wet. You want to wait until it's dry, and you're going to establish that without any tension. Okay, so we're going to come to this side. We're going to tip her straight up, and then we're going to tip her over so that we can see what we're doing here. Okay. First, I'm going to get this hair into my hands here. Since a little bit of this is hitting the ear, I'm just going to go ahead and make sure I'm not affecting that area at all, and I'm going to start working my way down. Now I'm going to tip her over so I can see all of this area. Okay. Now remember, because I'm putting this hair into my hands, I am elevating slightly, which I'll need to go back and correct later. I'm okay with that. Taking the ear into consideration and cutting my design line. making sure this hair at the front is over directed back so I don't take that length. Accounting for the ear and loosely cutting to that design line. And then I am going to hold the hair very loosely here. I don't want to take any of that length. I'm just going to take off that little corner there. And then again, over the ear, we're not really going to do a lot of finishing while it's wet. The only finishing I do is if I determine that one side is way longer than the other, then I'll go in and fix that right now. But other than that, I'm not going to fix much while it's wet. And then anything over the ear, we want to leave alone for now. There is one just long hair that I didn't cut, so I'm going to cut that. But anything else I'm going to leave. And now I need to check and make sure that it looks fairly symmetrical on either side, that my angle looks pretty good, and we'll go from there. So I feel like the front is fairly even. Over the ear is not going to be even on either side sometimes because some ears are bigger on one side and smaller on one side. So hold this pretty loosely. If it doesn't feel super even, just correct that at the end. Once it's dry and you look in the mirror, you can correct any pieces that are longer or shorter or anything like that. So I still cross-check it, but I don't do anything yet. Then I'm going to go behind the ear and make sure that that feels fairly even. And it does not. It feels longer on her left side. So I'll check that right now. And I'm going to go along and figure out where did I drop that guide so that the left side would be longer right there. And it looks like I still dropped it right here where I started just going a little too long. So from here to here is what I need to correct. I'm going to go back in, just determine that I'm right in that. Okay, so let's tip her down again. And by working in little sections like this, you won't have major corrections that need to be made at the end, and you won't have things that aren't able to be corrected because you're just working in little sections, and so you're able to very quickly correct those right away. Okay, so you can see here is the shape. And part of it, I think, is a little bit of the way her hair was put in. It kind of curves out this way. So we'll want to work on that, get that a little bit shorter. If you're not sure what that hair is going to do, you absolutely can wait until it's dry to correct it, especially if your client does have a lot of cowlicks at the hairline. You can wait until it's dry to be able to correct that. But I'm going to go in and just freehand cut that. Remember, she's tipping down, so I don't want to take off too much length because I don't want to affect the front and the length there. Establish where that point is. Okay, that feels more even. I'm going to go ahead and dry it, and we'll correct it when it's dry. I still might have curved down a little bit too quickly here, but that's something I can fix once it's dry. I would rather leave it longer than take it too short. There are times where you'll take it too far across, and then this hair goes straight, and then as you start curving, it looks like it's like a jagged angle as it goes down, and I don't want that. I want something very soft. So I'm okay with it being a little longer right there, and I'm going to show you how I blow dry this. So that I can do the layers and finish the design line. So this is step one, is the design line. If we were graduating, step two would be doing the graduation while it's wet. We'll do that in another video. We're going to skip step two and we're going to go straight to step three, which is blow drying the hair. And then from there, we'll do the layers.